Hello and welcome to Arnie's Short Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. The Phantom Circus. Holly Arnold had heard the tales for years, a circus that materialized only on certain nights, cloaked in mist on the Isle of Wight, its eerie cold drawing the unwary to their doom. Curiosity was her weakness, a thirst to uncover what most would avoid. And so, on the eve of a moonless October night, Holly found herself on the outskirts of an abandoned field just outside Newport, waiting. The night was silent, the air hanging heavy with an unnatural stillness. Then, faintly at first, she heard the distant strains of a calliope, tinny notes wending their way through the trees. As the music grew louder, a thick fog rolled in, blanketing the field in a chilling haze. Holly's pulse quickened, and she stepped forward, feeling both thrilled and unsettled. Through the mist, lights began to flicker, soft yellows and reds, the kind that might once have been painted on striped tents. Holly's heart skipped as she took in the sight that should not exist, a circus. Tent flaps fluttered in a breeze she couldn't feel, and silhouettes moved within, shadowy figures whose outlines were twisted, warped as if seen through the wrong end of a lens. She approached the entrance, where an old-fashioned banner announced, "Le Cirque des Ombres." Painted in ghostly script, the words faded in and out of visibility. As Holly neared, a figure emerged, a ringmaster in a suit that might have once been red but now seemed a faded, unnatural grey. His eyes gleamed with an unnatural light as he regarded her with an almost predatory smile. "Welcome, Miss Arnold," he intoned. His voice was slick, each syllable drawn out as if savoring them. "We've been expecting you." She hadn't told anyone where she was going, nor had she spoken her name aloud. "Who the hell do you know me?" "All will become clear. Come. The show is about to begin," without fully understanding why. The circus seemed to stretch endlessly, each tent leading to another, filled with sights that gnawed at the edges of sanity. In one, a troupe of acrobats swung from ropes that seemed to disappear into the inky darkness above, their faces blank and expressionless. One of them missed a swing, plummeting silently to the ground with a sickening crack. But no one moved to help him. The others continued, eyes dull, limbs moving with clockwork precision. Holly stumbled back, her mind reeling, but the ringmaster appeared at her side, his grip firm on her arm. "The show must go on, my dear. There is much more to see." They passed a tent where clowns painted in garish colors twisted their faces into unnatural smiles, the red of their painted mouths smeared and bleeding as they laughed soundlessly. Holly shuddered, averting her gaze, but the ringmaster's voice drew her onward, his words sliding into her ears like ice. She entered another tent, this one darker than the rest, where a single spotlight illuminated a cage. Inside, a lion paced back and forth, its once majestic mane now thin and patchy, its eyes flickering with a feral intelligence. Its gaze locked onto Holly, and a low growl rumbled through the tent. The beast seemed to lunge at her, only for her to realize that the cage bars were bent, creating gaps that the lion's body easily passed through. It was free. But just as the lion neared, it vanished, leaving only a hollow echo in the darkness. Holly felt her breath catch as the ringmaster reappeared beside her, his eyes glinting with a cruel amusement. "Isn't it magnificent? Our performers are bound here, night after night, caught between life and death." As if in answer, a chill wind swept through the tent. Holly turned and stumbled into the main ring, where a crowd of shadowy figures sat, their faces pale and blank as if drained of life. Each held a program, and as Holly glanced down at one, she felt her blood turn to ice. Her own name was printed on the cover, beneath the words "Tonight's Headliner." The spotlight swung around to rest on her, its harsh beam blinding. She tried to run, but her feet felt anchored, as if the earth itself had grown hands to hold her in place. The ringmaster's voice echoed through the tent. "Now for tonight's grand finale, the newest addition to our eternal show." Holly struggled as the shadows in the seats began to shift, standing up and drifting toward her, their hollow eyes focused. She felt their icy hands close around her arms, pulling her forward, their voices whispering in her ears, a cacophony of regrets, sorrow, and madness. "No!" she screamed, wrenching herself free, only to find herself back at the edge of the field. The mist was gone, the lights extinguished. She looked around wildly, her heart pounding, and found nothing but an empty, silent field. But as she turned to leave, something cold brushed her hand. She looked down to find a single slip of paper, yellowed and frayed, with her name printed on the cover. The words Le Cirque des Ombres danced across it, shimmering in the moonlight. And from the distance she heard the faint, haunting strains of a calliope calling her back. Holly stumbled back, clutching the paper, her fingers shaking. She stared at her name printed in elegant, looping script on the program, as if it had always been destined to be there. Despite her terror, a strange sense of compulsion gripped her. The music faded into the night, but a part of her could still hear it, like a lingering echo in her mind. Back at home, Holly tried to push the memory away, convincing herself that it was a fevered nightmare, a trick of shadows and moonlight. Yet, every time she closed her eyes, she saw the ringmaster's gaze, felt the freezing touch of those empty-eyed figures, and sensed something reaching out from the darkness to claim her. She couldn't shake it. Nor could she get rid of the program, which sat heavy and malevolent on her dresser, each glance at it filling her with unease. 2 nights later, Holly awoke to a soft, rhythmic tapping on her window. She sat up, heart racing. Outside, a dense mist swirled, blanketing the landscape, but something moved within it, a shadow, looming just beyond the glass. Her stomach twisted as the tapping grew louder, and then, faintly, the sound of that familiar calliope music wafted into her room. Her hands shook as she edged closer to the window. There, shrouded in fog, stood the ringmaster, his pale face glowing in the mist, eyes sharp and piercing. His smile was cold as ice, a hollow facsimile of warmth. "Holly," he called softly. This time she backed away, but the music grew louder, filling her mind. Each note wrapped around her like chains, drawing her to the door despite her every instinct screaming at her to run. She threw on her coat, feet moving as if under a spell, taking her back to the abandoned field. By the time she arrived, the circus was fully formed, its glowing lights cutting through the mist, its familiar tents looming like silent, sinister guardians. The ringmaster stood at the entrance, waiting, the program tucked neatly into his hands. "Tonight the show must go on," he said. "Are you ready for your debut?" Holly, she shook her head, but the shadows behind him began to move. The acrobats, the lion, the clowns, each of them hollow-eyed, with faces drained of color and life. They stared at her, expressions vacant yet expectant, waiting for her to join their ranks. The ringmaster held out the program to her, and Holly realized, with a sickening jolt, that a fresh page had been added. Holly Arnold, the reluctant performer. The ink seemed to glisten, as if still wet, as if her fate had just been inscribed. The moment she touched the program, she felt a surge of cold, a strange numbness that crept up her arms and rooted her in place. "Let the show begin," he announced, and Holly felt herself move. She was led into the main tent, where an empty spotlight awaited her. As she stepped into it, her vision blurred, and the faces in the crowd melded together, becoming a mass of shadows, as like glinting coins in the dark. The crowd waited, silent and hungry. Her heart hammered as her body began to move in a dance she'd never learned, a strange, jerking performance that felt entirely foreign, like a puppet on invisible strings. With every turn, the crowd grew more animated, their silent expressions twisting into grotesque masks of delight. Their applause was soundless, a mockery of life and joy. Holly's limbs ached, and her mind screamed for freedom, but the shadows held her fast. Finally, when her dance ended, the crowd rose in unison, drifting toward her like a wave of living darkness. The ringmaster appeared, his grin now gaping, hollow maw, and he leaned close. "You're one of us now. Your performance will last forever." The shadows swallowed her whole, icy tendrils wrapping around her, and the last thing she saw before the darkness consumed her was her own reflection in the ringmaster's eyes, a pale, hollow face with dead, glassy eyes. Days passed. Holly's friends and family searched for her, but she had vanished without a trace. Some claimed to have seen her, glimpsed in passing through the morning mist, her form flickering like an old photograph, her eyes as empty as the others. And sometimes, on moonless nights, the haunting calliope music could be heard drifting from the field, and those who listened closely swore they heard Holly's voice among the chorus, forever bound to the Phantom Circus, trapped in a performance that would never end. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had a great day.